The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was the largest structure ever built by any species. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a monument to cooperation and peace. Representatives from over 2,000 species gathered here to discuss trade, borders, and the future of civilization itself. The hall had seen arguments and celebrations, treaties signed, and wars ended. But it had never seen fear like this. Ambassador Cathari walked to the central platform. Her body was thin and tall, covered in scales that shifted color with her emotions. Right now, they were pale white, the color of terror. Her wings, normally held high and proud, hung low against her back. She had not slept in 3 days. She had traveled across half the galaxy to deliver this warning, and she prayed she was not too late. The other ambassadors watched her with confusion and annoyance. They had important matters to discuss. Trade disputes, mining rights, a small war on the outer rim that needed attention. They did not understand why this forlorn female had demanded an emergency session. Cathari activated the display screen behind her. It showed a map of the galaxy, with one sector highlighted in red. Sector 7 Omega, the Void Territories. 3 cycles ago, she began, her voice shaking, a research vessel from the hegemony activated an ancient beacon in this sector. The beacon was damaged and appeared to be a simple communication device. They repaired it. They turned it on. High Arbiter Zalman, the leader of the hegemony delegation, waved one of his many tentacles in dismissal. Yes, we are aware of our own research missions. The beacon was a relic, nothing more. It sent a simple distress signal into empty space. There is nothing in the Void Territories. Everyone knows this. Cathari's scales flickered to deep blue, the color of sadness. You are wrong. There is something in the Void Territories. Something that has been waiting for 10,000 years. Something that just received your signal. She changed the display. Now it showed an image that made several ambassadors gasp. It was a ship, but not like any ship they had ever seen. It was covered in scars and marks from countless battles. Its design was strange and primitive, with sharp angles and thick armor plating. And it was enormous. This vessel entered known space 6 hours ago, Cathari said. Behind it, our long-range sensors detected over 3,000 more ships. They are moving fast. They will reach the inner systems within 2 weeks. The chamber erupted in noise. Species shouted at each other in a dozen languages. Some demanded to know who these invaders were. Others claimed it was a trick, a lie, a mistake. Arbiter Zalman raised his tentacles for silence. Even if this is true, he said calmly, we have the combined fleets of the Galactic Assembly. We have defended against threats before. Who are these beings that we should fear them? Cathari closed her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper, but somehow every being in the hall heard her clearly. They are called Terrans, humans, children of Earth, and we should fear them because we are the ones who made them what they are. She told them the story, a story that had been erased from every database, removed from every history book, forbidden to be spoken for 100 centuries. The story of humanity. Long ago, before the current Galactic Assembly existed, there had been another civilization, the First Coalition. And among its founding members was a species from a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. They called themselves humans. The humans were strange. Their planet was a death world, a place where the environment itself seemed designed to kill them. Extreme temperatures, violent weather, poisonous plants, predatory animals. They should have died. Instead, they thrived. They adapted. They conquered their world and reached for the stars. When they joined the galactic community, the humans were friendly and curious. They wanted to learn everything, meet everyone, go everywhere. They shared their technology freely. They helped weaker species defend themselves. They built bridges between old enemies and created peace where there had been war. But the leaders of the first coalition grew afraid. The humans were too adaptable, too creative, too numerous. They had children faster than any other species. They could survive in environments that killed others. They refused to accept any obstacle as permanent. Given enough time, the coalition leaders realized the humans would become the dominant species in the galaxy. So they decided to act first. Catherine's voice broke as she described what happened next. The coalition gathered its fleets in secret. They surrounded the human homeworld, a planet called Earth, and they fired. For 6 hours, they bombarded the surface with every weapon they had. When they finished, nothing was left. 8 billion humans died in a single day. Cities that had stood for thousands of years became ash. Oceans boiled away. The sky itself burned. The survivors, perhaps a few million scattered across colony worlds and ships, fled into the only place they could go. The Void Territories, a region of space so dangerous, so hostile, that no other species could survive there. Radiation storms, rogue planets, stars that exploded without warning. The coalition watched them go and smiled. The human problem was solved. They would die in the darkness. The coalition erased all records of humanity. They made it forbidden to speak of them. Within a few generations, humans became myths, legends, ghost stories told to frighten children. But humans did not die. They survived, Catherine said. For 10,000 years, they survived in conditions that should have been impossible. They built ships from the wreckage of their destroyed colonies. They grew food in the light of dying stars. They raised their children on stories of what was done to them. And they waited. She looked directly at Arbiter Zolman, her eyes filled with tears. The beacon your researchers activated was a distress signal. It was calling for help. And the humans heard it. They are coming, Arbiter. Not to conquer. Not to negotiate. They are coming because someone called for help, and that is what humans do. They answer. Zolman scoffed. If they wanted revenge, they would have come centuries ago. You said yourself they want to help. Why should we fear helpers? Katari shook her head slowly. You do not understand. The humans will help whoever activated that beacon. They will protect the innocent. They will feed the hungry and heal the sick. But they will also remember. They will see what the galaxy has become, the slavery, the genocide, the cruelty we have allowed to flourish. And they will judge us. She spread her wings wide, a gesture of desperation. We must send a message. We must tell them to stay away. We must beg them not to come. Because if the humans return, everything will change. Every evil we have ignored, every crime we have allowed, every injustice we have tolerated will face their judgment. And humans do not show mercy to those who harm the innocent. The assembly voted. They sent the message. They pleaded with the approaching fleet to turn back, to stay in the void, to leave the galaxy alone. The response came 3 hours later. A single sentence broadcast on every frequency. We heard your call. We are coming. Nothing will stop us. The Terrans were returning, and the galaxy would never be the same. Commander Vrex of the Krethix Dominion was not a being who felt fear. His species have been bred for war over thousands of generations. They were tall, almost 3 meters, with thick armored skin and 4 powerful arms. Their eyes could see in complete darkness. Their reflexes were faster than any other known species. The Krethix had conquered 17 star systems in the past 10 years, and they had never lost a battle. Vrex sat in his command chair aboard the warship Destroyer of Worlds, watching his tactical display. His fleet of 50 ships had been sent to investigate strange energy readings near the Althean Nebula. What they found was disappointing. A single small vessel, barely larger than a shuttle, drifting through space on what appeared to be chemical engines. It had no visible weapons. Its hull was thin and covered in strange markings. Most puzzling of all, it had transparent sections in its exterior walls. What kind of fool builds a ship with windows? Rex asked his second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Torak. Torak studied the readings carefully. Unknown species, Commander. The vessel matches no configuration in our database. Shall we destroy it? Rex considered this for a moment. The Krethiks usually destroyed everything they encountered. It was simpler that way. But this ship was strange enough to be interesting. Perhaps the beings inside would make good slaves, or at least provide useful information. No, he decided. Disable it. We will board and take specimens. I want to know what species is stupid enough to travel in such a primitive craft. The operation should have been simple. Krethik's boarding parties were the most feared in the galaxy. 40 elite soldiers in full battle armor, carrying weapons that could cut through stone. They attached their shuttle to the alien vessel and burned through the hull in seconds. The atmosphere inside was thin and cold, filled with strange smells. The soldiers moved in perfect formation, covering every angle, ready for anything. What they found was a single alien sitting in what appeared to be a food preparation area. The creature was small, barely 1.5 meters tall. It had soft skin with no armor or scales, covered in strange fabric wrappings. Its body had only 2 arms and 2 legs, and it looked fragile enough that a single Krethix could tear it apart with minimal effort. It was holding a white ceramic container and appeared to be drinking a dark liquid. The alien looked up at the 40 armed soldiers flooding into its ship. It did not scream. It did not try to run. It did not beg for mercy. Instead, it made a strange sound with its mouth, something that might have been a sigh. "Oh," it said, and the translator implants automatically converted its words. "You guys are the ones who've been glassing colony worlds, right?" "The Krethiks?" Squad leader Morn was confused. This was not how prey was supposed to behave. He raised his weapon and aimed it at the creature's head. "You will surrender immediately. You are now property of the Krethik's dominion. Resist, and you will be terminated." The alien took another drink from its container. "Yeah, about that. I don't think so." It stood up slowly, and Morn noticed something strange about its eyes. They were not filled with fear. They were filled with something else. Something that made him feel, for the first time in his life, uncomfortable. "I've been tracking your fleet for 3 weeks," the alien continued. "I know about the colony on Veth Prime. 7 million people. You killed them all. Men, women, children. You didn't even take slaves. You just killed them for fun." Morn pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt should have vaporized the creature's head. Instead, the alien moved. It moved faster than Morn's eyes could follow. One moment, it was standing in front of him. The next moment, it was beside him, and his weapon was in its hands. "Terran combat reflexes," the alien said, almost casually. "We evolved on a death world. Everything on our planet tried to kill us. So we got really, really good at not dying. What happened next would haunt Commander Rex for the rest of his very short life." The distress signal reached his ship 12 minutes later. It was garbled and broken, filled with screaming and sounds of violence. The only coherent words were, "She will not stop. She will not stop. She will not stop." Rex immediately dispatched reinforcements. 100 more soldiers. They found the boarding shuttle empty. They found the original 40 soldiers scattered throughout the small vessel in pieces. And they found a message written on the wall in Krethik's blood. "Thanks for the new ship. See you soon." The alien had escaped. Somehow, impossibly, it had killed 40 elite Krethix warriors with its bare hands, stolen a fighter from the boarding shuttle, and vanished into the nebula. 3 hours later, every communication channel in the fleet received the same broadcast. "Hello there." The alien's voice was cheerful, almost friendly. "My name is Captain Sarah Chung of the Terran Expeditionary Force. You probably haven't heard of us. We've been away for a while. About 10,000 years, give or take." Rex felt something cold spreading through his body. He had heard the legends. Every species had. Stories of monsters from a dead world, creatures who could not be killed, beings who fought like demons and never surrendered. He had always thought they were myths. "I've sent your fleet's coordinates to my people," Sarah continued. "They'll be here in about 6 hours. I recommend you use that time to evacuate any civilians from your territory. We don't kill innocents, but everyone who participated in the Veth Prime massacre is going to have a really bad day." Rex grabbed his communication device. "This is Commander Rex. All ships, attack formation. Find that fighter and destroy it. Now, oh Commander." Sarah's voice was still calm, still cheerful. "I was hoping you would say that. See, my people have been waiting a long time for this. 10,000 years in the darkness, surviving on hope and anger. We've gotten very good at fighting. And we've been so very, very bored." The first Krethix ship exploded without warning. Then the second. Then the third. Sarah's stolen fighter danced between the fleet's weapons like it was playing a game. She was one pilot in one small ship, and she was winning against 50 warships. "One more thing," she said as she destroyed her 8th target. "The Krethix Dominion is finished. Your homeworld, your colonies, your slave camps, all of it. We're coming for all of it. And Commander, we don't take prisoners. We don't negotiate. We don't stop." Her voice dropped to something cold and hard. "You wanted to know what species was stupid enough to fly a ship with windows. We're humans. We come from a world where we fought everything and won. We survived extinction. We crawled out of the darkness stronger than ever. And now we're back." The last thing Commander Rex saw before his ship was torn apart was the alien fighter flying directly toward his bridge. Through the cockpit window, he could see the human smiling. "Welcome to the new galaxy," she said. "We hope you survive the experience." The Krethix Dominion had ruled 17 star systems through fear and violence. They had believed themselves invincible. They learned the truth in blood and fire. The Terrans had not forgotten what was done to them. And they had spent 10,000 years preparing for this moment. The misunderstanding was simple. The galaxy had thought humans were extinct. The galaxy had thought the void had killed them. The galaxy had forgotten to be afraid. That misunderstanding was about to be corrected. The Krethix Dominion fell in 11 days. Not defeated, not conquered, dismantled, taken apart piece by piece by an enemy that never stopped, never slowed, never rested. The Galactic Assembly watched in stunned silence as the reports came in. The first day, Terran ships appeared at the edges of Krethix space and destroyed every military outpost along the border. The second day, they pushed deeper, targeting weapons factories and shipyards. By the 5th day, the Krethix fleet was reduced to scattered groups of survivors fleeing in random directions. By the 8th day, the Krethix homeworld was surrounded. High Arbiter Zolman called an emergency meeting. His tentacles trembled as he addressed the gathered ambassadors. "This is impossible," he said for the 100th time. "Our intelligence indicated their technology was inferior. Their ships are old. Their weapons are primitive compared to ours. How are they winning?" Ambassador Cathari had been watching the reports with tired eyes. She had not slept since the Terrans arrived. She had been trying to warn everyone, but nobody listened. Now they wanted answers, and she was too exhausted to feel satisfaction. "You measured the wrong things," she said quietly. "You looked at their ships and their weapons. You calculated power outputs and shield strengths. You compared their technology to ours and decided they were weak." She stood and walked to the central display. With a few touches, she brought up a biological analysis of a human being. "This is what you should have measured." The data scrolled across the screen. The other ambassadors leaned forward, studying the information with growing confusion and horror. "Humans do not require sleep cycles like we do," Cathari explained. "They can remain fully functional for days without rest. When they finally do sleep, a few hours is enough to restore them completely. Their soldiers have been fighting continuously since they arrived. They work in shifts, but the shifts never end. There is always a fresh human ready to take over." She highlighted another section. "Their bodies contain a chemical called adrenaline. When they are in danger, when they are injured, when they are afraid, their bodies release this chemical. It suppresses pain. It increases strength. It speeds up their reflexes. The more you hurt them, the more dangerous they become." The display showed images of humans in various environments: frozen wastelands, burning deserts, toxic swamps, crushing ocean depths. "They evolved on a death world," Cathari continued. "Every environment on their planet was hostile. Every creature was a potential predator. They survived by adapting to everything. There is no climate they cannot endure, no food they cannot digest, no challenge they will not accept." She paused on an image that made several ambassadors look away. It showed a human consuming a small red vegetable. "This is called a pepper. It contains a chemical that causes severe pain in most species. Humans eat it for pleasure. They enjoy the pain. They have competitions to see who can consume the most painful food." Arbiter Zolman made a sound of disgust. "They are insane." "Yes," Cathari agreed. "By any reasonable standard, humans are completely insane. They climb mountains that can kill them for fun. They jump out of aircraft with nothing but fabric to slow their fall. They keep predatory animals as companions and call them pets. They form emotional bonds with machines and will fight to protect a ship or a robot as fiercely as they would fight to protect their own children." She turned to face the assembly directly. "This is what you face. A species that treats death as a game. A species that enjoys pain. A species that never gives up, never surrenders, never stops. And you made them angry. You killed their homeworld. You murdered 8 billion of them. And then you forgot about them for 10,000 years." The chamber was silent. Every being present was imagining what it would be like to face such an enemy. Then a new transmission arrived. The display screen flickered and showed a human face. He was older, with gray hair and lines around his eyes. He wore a military uniform covered in medals and symbols. Behind him, through a large window, the Krethik's homeworld was visible. It was surrounded by Terran ships. "This is Admiral Chun of the Terran Expeditionary Force," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I am broadcasting this message to the Galactic Assembly and to all species within range." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made even the bravest ambassadors shiver. "The Krethik's dominion is dissolved. All military assets have been destroyed or captured. All government leaders who participated in genocide are in our custody. They will face trial for crimes against sentient beings." The Admiral's eyes seemed to look through the screen, directly at each viewer. "Let me be very clear about who we are and what we want. We are the Terran species. 10,000 years ago, you tried to exterminate us. You killed our homeworld. You murdered our families. You drove us into the darkness and expected us to die." His expression did not change, but but something in his eyes grew colder. We did not die. We survived. We grew strong. We built a civilization in the places you thought were impossible to survive. And we waited. Not for revenge. Not for conquest. We waited because we believed that someday someone would call for help. And we would answer. The Admiral pressed a button, and the screen split to show dozens of images. Refugee camps. Destroyed cities. Mass graves. The victims of the Krethix Dominion's expansion. The beacon that brought us here was a distress signal. Someone was crying out for help. That is why we came. Not for ourselves. For them. The images changed again. Now they showed Terran soldiers distributing food to starving aliens. Terran medics treating the wounded. Terran engineers building shelters for refugees. Terran ships evacuating civilians from war zones. We are here to help those who cannot help themselves. We are here to protect the innocent. We are here to ensure that no species ever again faces extinction at the hands of conquerors and murderers. The Admiral leaned forward slightly. But understand this. We see what this galaxy has become. We see the slave markets. We see the death camps. We see the species that prey on the weak and the powerful who ignore their suffering. We will not ignore it. His voice hardened. Any government that commits genocide will be destroyed. Any species that practices slavery will face judgment. Any power that attacks civilians will answer to us. This is not a threat. This is a promise. We did not ask to come back. We did not want to return to the galaxy that betrayed us. But you called us. You sent a cry for help into the darkness. And humans never ignore that cry. The Admiral stood straight, his eyes filled with something that might have been grief or might have been determination. We are humanity. We protect the innocent. We punish the guilty. We never forget, and we never forgive. But we also never abandon those who need us. He raised his hand in a gesture that seemed almost ceremonial. The reckoning has begun. Choose your side carefully. The transmission ended. In the assembly chamber, no one spoke for a long time. They were all thinking the same thing. The galaxy had begged the Terrans not to arrive. The Terrans had ignored them. And now everything was going to change. 3 months had passed since the fall of the Krethix Dominion. The galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened and what it meant for the future. The Terrans had established a presence in former Krethix space, but they had not expanded further. They seemed to be waiting for something. Ambassador Kethari received a private invitation to meet with Admiral Chun aboard his flagship, the TES Remembrance. She accepted immediately. The Valorans had been allies of humanity in the old times, before the betrayal, before the genocide. Perhaps that connection still meant something. The Terran ship was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was enormous, larger than some space stations, but it felt alive somehow. The corridors were decorated with images and symbols from Earth, photographs of mountains and oceans, paintings of cities that no longer existed, statues of humans in various poses, celebrating, working, fighting, loving. A young Terran officer escorted her through the ship. He was polite and professional, but Kethari noticed that he kept glancing at her wings. When she asked why, he smiled. "Sorry, Ambassador. I've never seen a Valoran before. My grandmother used to tell stories about your people. She said the Valorans were the only species who tried to warn humanity about the attack. The only ones who tried to help us escape." Kethari felt a sharp pain in her chest. "We failed. We could not save your world." The officer shook his head. "You tried. That matters. My grandmother said that the Valorans gave their own ships to help evacuate human refugees. Many of your people died protecting us." He stopped walking and looked at her directly. "We remember, Ambassador. Humans have long memories. We remember our enemies, but we also remember our friends. Admiral Chun was waiting in a large observation room. One wall was entirely transparent, showing the stars beyond. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring into the void. "Ambassador Kethari," he said without turning around. "Thank you for coming. I wanted to speak with you privately before we address the assembly." Kethari joined him at the window. "What do you want to discuss, Admiral?" He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion. "I want you to understand why we came back. The real reason." He turned to face her. His eyes were tired, filled with the weight of centuries of loss. "For 10,000 years, my people survived in the void. We built ships from wreckage. We grew food in artificial habitats. We raised our children in darkness, telling them stories about a blue planet with green forests and blue oceans. A planet they would never see because it had been turned to ash." He walked to a display panel and activated it. Images appeared. The early days of the exile. Crowded ships filled with desperate refugees. Children crying for parents who had died in the fire. Adults working endlessly to keep their people alive. "Every generation swore revenge," Chun continued. "Every child grew up knowing what had been done to us. The names of the species that attacked us were taught in every school. The burning of Earth was our most sacred memory. We told ourselves that someday, when we were strong enough, we would return and make them pay." Kathari felt her wings pressing close to her body. "And now you are strong enough." "Yes," Chun's voice was flat. "We could destroy this galaxy. Every ship, every world, every species that participated in the attack or benefited from our absence. We have the weapons. We have the numbers. We have 10,000 years of rage burning in our hearts." He turned off the display and faced her again. "Do you know what stopped us?" Kathari shook her head. The Admiral pressed another button. A new image appeared. It was a recording from a Terran ship, showing the rescue of refugees from a Krethic slave camp. Alien children were being carried to safety by human soldiers. Medical teams were treating the wounded. Engineers were setting up shelters and food distribution centers. "When the beacon activated, we debated what to do," Chun said. "Many of our leaders wanted to ignore it. They said the galaxy deserved whatever suffering it experienced. They said we should stay in the void and let the species who had betrayed us destroy each other." He pointed at the recording. "But then we realized something. The signal was a cry for help. Someone was dying, and they were begging for rescue. And we asked ourselves a simple question. What kind of people do we want to be?" The recording showed a human medic, a young woman with kind eyes, bandaging the wounds of an alien child. The child was from a species Kethari did not recognize, small and covered in soft fur. It was crying, terrified, alone. The medic held it gently and sang a soft song until it calmed down. "We could have become monsters," Chun said quietly. 10,000 years of hatred could have turned us into exactly what the galaxy feared. Destroyers, conquerors, beings, driven by nothing but revenge. He paused, watching the recording. "But our ancestors did not survive the void so their descendants could become evil. They survived so humanity could continue. And humanity, at its core, is not about destruction. It is about protection. It is about hope. It is about standing between the innocent and those who would harm them." He turned off the recording. "That is the truth, Ambassador. We came back because someone called for help. We will stay because there is still so much suffering that needs to end. And we will never become the monsters that tried to exterminate us." Kathari felt tears forming in her eyes. "But the species who attacked Earth, the descendants of those who murdered your people, they still exist. They sit in the assembly. They profit from the galaxy you protected." Admiral Chun nodded slowly. "We know. and we remember every name, every government, every decision-maker who voted for our extinction. He walked back to the window and stared at the stars. But revenge would not bring back Earth. It would not resurrect the 8 billion who died. It would only create more orphans, more refugees, more species nursing their own wounds and dreaming of vengeance. He shook his head. We spent 10,000 years becoming strong enough to destroy this galaxy. And then we chose not to. Kethari joined him at the window. Why? The Admiral smiled, though his eyes remained sad. Because that is not who we want to be. The old humanity, the humanity that lived on Earth, they made mistakes. They fought wars. They hurt each other. But they also dreamed of something better. They believed that life was precious, that every being deserved a chance, that the strong should protect the weak. He placed his hand on the transparent wall, reaching toward the stars. We want to honor that dream, not with revenge, with redemption. We will help this galaxy become what it should have been, what it could have been if fear and hatred had not poisoned it. He turned to Kethari one final time. That is the truth, Ambassador. We are not here to punish the past. We are here to build the future. But we will do it our way. And anyone who stands in the path of that future, anyone who threatens the innocent or continues the old cruelties, will discover that humans are very, very good at removing obstacles. Kethari understood. The Terrans had not come for revenge. They had come for something far more powerful. They had come for justice, and justice, she realized, was far more terrifying than revenge could ever be. 1 year had passed since the Terran fleet entered known space. The galaxy was a different place now. The slave markets of the Hollow Syndicate were gone. The death camps of the Morthax Imperium stood empty, their victims freed and relocated to safe worlds. 16 species that had been facing extinction now thrived under Terran protection. For the first time in recorded history, no active genocides were occurring anywhere in known space. Admiral Chun stood on the observation deck of the TES Remembrance, watching as Terran engineers worked alongside alien volunteers to rebuild a colony that the Krethics had destroyed years ago. The planet below was green again. Farms were growing. Schools were opening. Children who had been born into slavery were learning to read and play and dream of the future. Ambassador Kethari joined him. Her wings caught the light of the system's young sun, shimmering with colors of hope and wonder. Your people have accomplished incredible things, Admiral, she said. In 1 year, you have done what the Galactic Assembly could not do in 10,000. Chum smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. We have barely started. There is still so much suffering, so many wounds that need healing. They watched in comfortable silence as a Terran medical ship descended toward the planet's largest city. It would bring doctors, medicine, and technology that would transform the lives of millions. Behind it, cargo vessels carried food, building materials, and educational equipment. I have been meaning to ask you something, Kethari said finally. Your people sent warnings before you arrived. You begged us not to activate the beacon. You pleaded with the Assembly to turn you away. Why? The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Because we knew what would happen when we returned, he said. We knew that we would have to face the descendants of those who murdered our homeworld. We knew that old hatreds would resurface. We knew that some of our people might lose themselves to vengeance. He turned to face her. For 10,000 years, we debated what to do if we ever had the chance to return. Some wanted conquest. Some wanted isolation. Some wanted to forget the galaxy entirely and build our own civilization in the void forever. But there was always another voice. A voice that asked, what if someone needs help? What if we hear a cry in the darkness? Can we truly ignore it? Kethari nodded slowly. And when the beacon activated, you answered. We had to, Chun said simply. That is who we are. We could not have lived with ourselves if we had heard that cry and done nothing. Even knowing that returning meant facing our worst memories, our deepest pain. Even knowing that we might be tempted to become the very monsters who destroyed our world. He looked back at the planet below, where human and alien children were playing together in a rebuilt park. We came because someone was suffering. We stayed because there was work to do. And we will keep working until this galaxy is what it should be. What it could have been if fear had not driven our ancestors to violence. A new ship appeared in orbit. It was not Terran. It was a diplomatic vessel from the Galactic Assembly, carrying representatives from dozens of species. They had come to witness the rebuilding, to see what the Terrans had accomplished. Among them were delegates from species whose ancestors had participated in the attack on Earth. Species who had voted for humanity's extinction. Species who had watched 8 billion people die and felt nothing but relief. Cathari watched them approach with uncertainty. How can you work with them? How can you stand to look at them? Admiral Chun was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. I look at them and I see their children, he said. Their children did not choose to be born into families stained by ancient crimes. Their children are not responsible for what happened 10,000 years ago. If I punish them for the sins of their ancestors, how am I different from the beings who tried to exterminate us? He watched the diplomatic vessel dock with the remembrance. Every being deserves the chance to choose who they want to be. The chance to learn from the past and do better. That is what we are offering this galaxy. Not forgiveness for what was done. We cannot forgive that. But the chance to build something new. Something better. The delegates were escorted to the observation deck. They looked uncomfortable, aware that they were standing on a ship built by the descendants of those their ancestors had tried to kill. But Admiral Chun greeted them with courtesy and respect. Welcome aboard, he said. I hope you will join us on the surface. There is much to see. Over the next several hours, the delegates toured the rebuilt colony. They saw hospitals and schools. They saw factories and farms. They saw children of a dozen species learning together, playing together, growing up in peace. And everywhere they looked, they saw humans working alongside aliens without hatred or resentment. One of the delegates, a young representative from a species that had been among the attackers of Earth, approached Admiral Chen with tears in his eyes. How can you do this? He asked. After everything we did to you, how can you help us? Chen looked at the young alien for a long moment. Then he placed his hand on the delegate's shoulder in a gesture of comfort. Because helping is what we do, he said. Because hatred consumes everything it touches, and we refuse to be consumed. Because somewhere in the void, during those 10,000 years of darkness, we found something more powerful than revenge. What did you find? The Admiral smiled, and for the first time since the Terrans had returned, it was a smile of genuine peace. Purpose. We found purpose. A reason to exist that was bigger than our pain. Bigger than our loss. Bigger than the injustice that was done to us. He gestured at the world around them. This is our purpose now. Building, healing, protecting, creating a galaxy where no species ever has to fear extinction, where no child ever has to grow up in slavery, where every being has the chance to live and dream and grow. The young delegate wiped his eyes. We do not deserve this. Perhaps not, Chan agreed. But you are getting it anyway. That is what mercy means. Giving others what they need, not what they deserve. The sun was setting over the colony, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Human and alien families gathered to watch, standing together in comfortable silence. Somewhere, a child was laughing. Admiral Chun listened to that laughter and felt something he had not felt in many years. Not satisfaction, not victory, something simpler and more precious: hope. The galaxy had begged the Terrans not to arrive. They had ignored those pleas because someone was crying for help. And now, 1 year later, the galaxy was beginning to understand what humanity truly was. Not conquerors, not destroyers, not monsters seeking revenge. They were protectors, builders, healers. They were the dawn after the longest night, and they would never abandon those who needed them. The Terrans had returned. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, in the end, was exactly what the galaxy had needed all along.